I want to begin the first of three little lectures here with a recap of what we were talking about in Descartes. Last week we saw sort of the culmination of our thinking in Descartes in terms of his two main goals. The first goal being certainty, and the second goal being utility. And we finished off this goal of certainty, and we began the goal of utility last week. And we're going to focus on Descartes' motivation for utility. We said, of course, that the culmination of this idea of utility was in this idea of the mastery of nature. So we want to see really what does Descartes, how does he conceive of this once again in terms of how it fits in with all of human life. Descartes argues that we have a moral obligation for the mastery of nature. If we were to go to page 35, that's part 6 of the Discourse on Method. We read this text last time that said, I believed I could not keep my ideas of nature hidden away without sinning grievously against the law that obliges us to procure as much as in our power the common good of all men. Descartes firmly believes that it's the mastery of nature in which we'll be able to serve what is actually good for us as human beings. Now, of course, we distinguish this, Descartes' idea of seeking what is good for man, the good for man, we said that was distinguished between how sort of a classical understanding, which, as we discussed with Plato and Aristotle, was through this notion of virtue, that you need to become a virtuous person so that you can ultimately seek happiness as your end, that you can become the kind of person who can enjoy the best activities, right? From this more modern perspective, this new Descartes' perspective, we seek it through what we would call something like science, that we need to understand nature in order to be able to change the conditions of our life in order to find something like happiness. So this good of man, the happiness that we seek, for the classical understanding, we need to we seek it by changing who we are, by becoming the kind of person who can enjoy doing what is best in life, both what is morally the best, what are the best kind of activities that fulfill our human nature. Well, this new modern mastery of nature says we need to change nature. We need to eliminate disease. We need to eliminate the impediments to human power that get in our way. And this is essentially how then we can seek the common good. Descartes criticizes some of this old understanding of virtue, though. He says that this old understanding of virtue really isn't good at all. He says because if you're a good person, you can still die of a disease. If you're a good person, you could still suffer. So here we see Descartes criticize this view. So here on page 37 of part 6, he says, that is what I meant to make known through the treatise I had written, and to show there so clearly the utility that the public could gain from such knowledge, that I would oblige all those who desire the general well-being of men, that is to say, all those who really are virtuous, not just appearing to be so through false pretenses or merely by reputation, both to communicate those experiments they have already performed and to assist me to search for those that remain to be performed. Right? So he says that true virtue, the true goodness, will come through serving people through science. If we go back to a quote that we had seen in one of our first classes in part 1, where Descartes argues here, on the other hand, I compared the writings of the ancient pagans that deal with morals to very proud and very magnificent palaces that were built on nothing but sand and mud. They place virtues on a high plateau and make them appear to be valued more than anything else in the world, but they do not sufficiently instruct us on how to recognize them, or often what to call them by so fine, or what they call by so fine-sounding a name is nothing more than a kind of insensibility, pride, desperation, and parricide. Right? Descartes ultimately argues here in this notion of the mastery of nature, that the mastery of nature is our way of seeking what is ultimately good for us as human beings. So what I'd suggest is this is part of what makes Descartes the father of modern philosophy, is this new approach to seeking our common good as people. We today, I think, still maintain something like Descartes' vision of how mastery of nature is the means to seek human happiness. if we look at our love and desire of technology, if we look at our changing of human institutions, changing of human bodies, in order to fit more with our own human purposes, we kind of see in themselves this idea that the human world is, and we'll see this come up when we discuss another thing, that the human world is sort of this raw material for human activity. That we as human beings, that the world is this raw material for our human activity, that we sort of recognize what are our purposes, what are our goals, in life, and then we make nature fit with those purposes. And I think this is an interesting modern kind of ideal that's embedded in this.